The Crystal Hall restaurant was buzzing that night. It was the kind of place where deals worth millions were sealed over champagne, where every chandelier seemed to drip with money, and where a waitress like Emily was invisible, unless she made a mistake. The air was thick with perfume, hushed laughter, and the sound of cutlery clinking against porcelain. Everyone inside knew they were in the presence of the powerful. At the center table, the kind of spot usually reserved for kings, sat Alexander Pierce, billionaire, media tycoon, a man whose fortune could buy and sell entire cities. His reputation was legendary, brilliant in business, ruthless with people. His salt and pepper hair was slicked back, his tailored suit flawless, his every movement radiating power. For most of the staff, he was untouchable, someone to fear more than to serve. Emily, just 23, carried a tray with trembling hands. Her uniform, neat but worn, clung to her small frame. She had worked double shifts all week, her eyes hollow from lack of sleep, but she never complained. Every dollar mattered. Her younger brother was sick, the medical bills piling higher each day. She had no time for herself, no space for dreams, only survival. That night, fate placed her directly in front of Alexander Pierce. He sat with a young woman at his side, dazzling in a designer dress. They looked like a king and queen holding court, every glance from other diners heavy with awe and envy. "Wine," Alexander demanded, not even looking up from his phone. His voice was sharp, dismissive, as though speaking to a servant in his mansion rather than a human being. "Yes, sir," Emily whispered, forcing a polite smile. She had dealt with rude customers before, but there was something about him, the coldness, the arrogance, that made her hands sweat. When she returned with the wine, something caught her eye. The young woman leaned forward, her dress shifting slightly, and Emily froze. Around her neck was a necklace, not just any necklace, the necklace. Emily's heart stopped. Her breath caught in her throat. She knew that piece of jewelry better than anything in the world. It had once belonged to her mother, a delicate silver chain with a uniquely cut emerald centerpiece. She remembered tracing its lines as a child, her mother's voice telling her bedtime stories while the stone glimmered softly under the lamplight. It wasn't just jewelry. It was a memory, a promise, the last piece of her mother she had left. But how? Her mother had died years ago, clutching that very necklace in her fragile hands. Emily had never seen it again after the funeral. She assumed it had been lost, buried, or stolen during those painful, confusing days. Now it was here, in this glittering palace of wealth, hanging from the throat of a stranger beside the most powerful man she had ever seen. Her vision blurred with tears. Her hands shook so violently the wineglass nearly slipped. She fought to breathe, to keep her composure, but the world was tilting. "Careful," Alexander snapped, his icy eyes finally meeting hers. "Do you know how much this bottle costs? Don't make a fool of yourself." Emily swallowed hard, blinking back tears. She wanted to stay silent, to keep her job, to survive another shift, but something stronger rose inside her. Grief, rage, and an ache she had carried for years. Her voice cracked as she spoke, trembling but clear enough for the entire table to hear. "Sir, that's my mother's necklace." The room went silent. Forks clattered against plates. The pianist at the far corner struck a wrong note and stopped playing altogether. Every head turned toward their table. Alexander Pierce slowly lowered his glass, his face a mask of disbelief. The young woman beside him looked startled, her hand instinctively covering the necklace. For one endless moment, no one moved. Then Alexander leaned forward, his eyes narrowing, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "What did you just say?" Emily stood frozen under the weight of Alexander Pierce's glare, but her mind was already slipping away, pulled backward into memories she had spent years trying to bury. She had not always been this thin, this tired, this burdened by life. Once, she had been a girl full of light, dancing in the kitchen with her mother, while cheap radio music played in the background. Their apartment had been small, barely more than a box, but it was filled with laughter. Her mother's necklace, the same one now gleaming on that stranger's neck, had always been at the center of those moments. "Touch it, Emmy," her mother would say, guiding her small fingers to trace the emerald stone. "It's more than jewelry. It's a promise." A promise. Emily never understood what that meant until the day the laughter stopped. Her mother grew ill when Emily was just 15. At first it was exhaustion, then endless doctor visits, then nights filled with the sound of coughing that shook the walls. Medical bills swallowed everything. Their fridge emptied, their lights flickered from unpaid bills, but the necklace remained, always on her mother's chest, glowing like a stubborn flame against the darkness. Emily begged her to sell it. "Mom, please, the medicine, the hospital, it's just a necklace." But her mother shook her head, her eyes burning with a desperate kind of love. "No, Emmy, you must never sell it. One day you'll understand. This necklace carries the truth. It will bring you justice. Promise me you'll keep it." Emily promised. She still remembered the night her mother slipped the chain from her own neck and placed it around Emily's. The room smelled of antiseptic and fading flowers. Her mother's hand trembled as she whispered, "This is yours now. Don't let it go. Don't let the world take it from you." Emily clung to her, sobbing. But within hours, the hand that had stroked her hair so gently lay still. The necklace was the last piece of her mother she had left. And then it was gone. The weeks after the funeral were a blur of relatives and paperwork. Somewhere in the chaos, the necklace disappeared. Emily searched every drawer, every box, every corner of their apartment. But it had vanished. She was too young, too overwhelmed to fight harder. She told herself it must have been stolen, maybe sold by someone who saw only metal and stone where she saw memory and love. Years passed. Emily became both sister and parent to her younger brother, Daniel. He was fragile, born with a condition that drained his strength and filled their lives with hospital visits. Emily worked anywhere she could, diners, grocery stores, night shifts, just to keep him alive. Every dollar she earned went to prescriptions, to machines that hummed beside his bed at night, to doctors who spoke in numbers and bills rather than hope. And through it all she carried a hollow ache where the necklace should have been. She wore a cheap silver replica her mother once bought at a flea market, not for its value, but because she couldn't bear the emptiness around her neck. That imitation necklace became her shield, a poor substitute, but it made her feel as if her mother was still near. So when she saw the real one tonight, when she recognized the faint scratch on the emerald surface, the mark she had traced as a child with tiny, curious fingers, it felt as though her mother had risen from the grave to stand beside her. Emily's lips trembled. She wanted to scream, to tear the necklace from the woman's throat, to demand the truth. But she knew the man sitting across from her wasn't just any man. He was Alexander Pierce, powerful, untouchable, dangerous. And he was staring at her like she had just unearthed a secret he had buried decades ago. What Emily didn't know was that this necklace was never meant to leave Alexander's hands, and her words had just ripped open the past he had spent his entire life hiding. The Crystal Hall was not just a restaurant. It was a stage where the richest men and women of New York performed their power. Every corner glimmered with extravagance, chandeliers dripping crystals like frozen waterfalls, velvet curtains heavy with gold trim, and polished marble floors that reflected every step as though the very ground bowed to wealth. To dine here meant you belonged to an invisible club where one glass of wine cost more than most people's monthly rent. Waiters moved across the room like dancers in a silent ballet, their uniforms tailored to perfection, every gesture rehearsed until it looked effortless. The pianist, seated beneath a towering floral arrangement, played a delicate waltz that blended into the clinking of silverware. To the patrons, this was paradise. To the staff, it was a battlefield where one mistake could cost your job or your dignity. And tonight, The battlefield was charged with something far heavier than etiquette. When Emily's trembling words sliced through the air, "Sir, that's my mother's necklace," the atmosphere of luxury shattered. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks hovered above plates of caviar and lobster tails. The pianist froze, his hands suspended over ivory keys. All eyes turned toward the center table, toward Alexander Pierce and the fragile waitress standing before him. The guests didn't know who Emily was, but they knew Alexander. Everyone knew Alexander. A man like him never tolerated disrespect, let alone public accusation. He leaned back in his chair, one hand gripping the stem of his wine glass, the other resting casually on the table, though the tightening of his jaw betrayed his control. His steel-grey eyes locked on Emily, dissecting her as though she were an insect daring to crawl across his empire. "You're mistaken," he said finally, his tone low but carrying across the room. "This necklace is priceless. There's only one in the world, and it belongs to me." The woman beside him, still clutching the necklace as if it were suddenly a burning coal, glanced nervously at Emily. Her lips parted, but she said nothing. Emily's knees wobbled, but she stood her ground. "I'm not mistaken. I'd recognize it anywhere. My mother wore it every day until—" her voice faltered. "Until she died." A ripple of whispers traveled across the room, like a sudden breeze disturbing still water. Patrons leaned in, their jeweled ears hungry for scandal. Alexander let out a quiet laugh, but it was void of humor. "Touching story, but lies all the same. Do you think you can walk into my world, wave a sad tale, and take what isn't yours? Pathetic." His words were sharp enough to slice through her chest. She could feel humiliation rising, threatening to drown her. But then, something unexpected happened. The maitre d', a man who had worked at Crystal Hall for 20 years and had never once spoken out of turn, stepped forward. His voice trembled, but he spoke. "Sir, if I may, I remember seeing a necklace like that once, long ago, on a woman who came here quietly before this establishment became so exclusive. She looked very much like this young lady." Gasps fluttered around the room. Alexander's head snapped toward the maitre d', his eyes narrowing dangerously. "Enough!" he barked. The authority in his voice cracked like thunder. "Another word, and you'll regret it." But the damage was already done. The room had shifted. The guests, who once bowed silently to his presence, were now watching with doubt in their eyes. Emily felt her pulse quicken. For the first time, she wasn't entirely alone. Someone else had seen the truth. Someone who remembered. And as Alexander Pierce's face paled ever so slightly, Emily realized something chilling. The man who ruled boardrooms and headlines was afraid, and his fear was about to unravel everything. The silence that hung over Crystal Hall was thick enough to choke on. The patrons had come here expecting foie gras, aged wine, and quiet luxury, not a scandal unfolding before their eyes. Yet now, every gaze in the room was fixed on Alexander Pierce and the trembling waitress who had dared to challenge him. Alexander's hand clenched around his wineglass until his knuckles whitened. His reputation had been built on control, never rattled, never humiliated. But the accusation from Emily had struck a nerve, and the faint crack in his composure was visible for all to see. At his side, the woman with the necklace shifted uncomfortably. Her name was Vanessa Crane, a socialite whose beauty was matched only by her hunger for status. She had clung to Alexander for the power his name provided. But now, with every whisper snaking through the restaurant, she looked less like a queen and more like a pawn caught in a storm. Vanessa's voice broke the silence. "Alex, maybe she's mistaken. This is making a scene." Her manicured fingers hovered protectively over the emerald necklace, as though she feared Emily might snatch it away. Alexander turned to her sharply, his glare silencing her in an instant. "No," he said, his voice a blade of steel. "She isn't mistaken. She's lying." The words sliced through Emily. She wanted to scream that she wasn't lying, that her mother's memory wasn't some cheap story. But before she could speak, Alexander stood, towering over her. The power of his presence was suffocating. "Listen to me carefully," he said, his voice raised enough for the entire room to hear. "I've built an empire worth billions. I've crushed men 10 times stronger than you. And you," his finger jabbed toward her chest, trembling with rage, "are nothing, just a servant in a uniform. How dare you try to humiliate me in my own city?" Gasps rippled through the diners. Some looked away, unwilling to witness what felt like an execution. Others leaned in, hungry for the spectacle. Emily's cheeks burned. She wanted to disappear, but her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "Don't let the world take it from you." "I'm not trying to humiliate you," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I just want the truth. That necklace belonged to my mother. I swear it." Alexander's laugh was cold and cruel. "Your mother?" He tilted his head, his eyes glinting with malice. "Then she was either a thief or a liar. And now you're following in her footsteps." The words hit Emily like a physical blow. Her chest tightened, tears threatening to spill. He wasn't just denying her. He was dragging her mother's memory through the mud. Vanessa shifted again, her discomfort growing. "Alex, please. Everyone is staring." "Let them stare," Alexander roared, slamming his glass onto the table. Red wine splashed across the white linen like blood. "Let them see what happens to liars who think they can blackmail me." Emily's stomach twisted. Blackmail? That wasn't what this was. She hadn't asked for money, hadn't demanded anything, only recognition of the truth. But his words turned her grief into a public scandal, a performance meant to crush her under the weight of his power. The maitre d' hesitated at the edge of the scene, his face pale, as though torn between duty to his employer and the memory of what he had once seen. His lips parted, but fear kept him silent. Emily stood alone, every eye in the room drilling into her. Her brother's face flashed in her mind. Daniel, pale and fragile in his hospital bed. She couldn't crumble now. She couldn't afford to. Her hands trembled as she lifted her chin, her eyes meeting Alexander's with a flicker of defiance. "You can call me whatever you want, but I know what I saw. That necklace is my mother's, and you can't erase the truth." For the first time, Alexander's confident mask faltered. His pupils dilated, his jaw tightened. The reaction was small, almost invisible, but Emily saw it. And in that fleeting crack, she realized something astonishing. Alexander Pierce was hiding a secret that terrified him more than losing his empire. The wine spread across the linen like a wound, deep red against stark white. A hush fell heavier than before, as if the entire restaurant was holding its breath. Alexander Pierce stood, towering above Emily, his shadow stretching across her trembling figure. His voice, sharp and merciless, carried to every corner of Crystal Hall. "You want the truth?" he spat, his finger stabbing the air. "The truth is this: your mother was a thief, a liar, and now her daughter has inherited the same disease. You've come here not for justice, but for money. That's all people like you ever want." The words burned hotter than fire. Emily's chest heaved, her throat closing as humiliation swept through her. She had known ridicule before, from cruel classmates, from heartless managers, but this was different. This was her mother's memory, desecrated in front of strangers who wore pearls and diamonds. The diners whispered. Some gasped in sympathy, others smirked behind raised glasses. To them it was entertainment. To Emily, it was destruction. Her lips trembled. "You're wrong," she whispered, though her voice was barely audible. Alexander leaned closer, his breath cold against her face. "Am I? Then where is this so-called necklace of your mother's? If you had it, you would have brought it here. You would have shown the world. But you don't, do you? Because it never existed. You fabricated a story to shame me. Pathetic. The word struck like a blade. Her mind flashed back to the days after her mother's funeral. The frantic search through drawers and boxes, the hollow realization that the necklace was gone. She had thought it stolen. And now, Alexander was using its absence as a weapon to destroy her. Her knees weakened, but she clenched her fists, refusing to collapse. It did exist, she croaked. I wore it until it vanished. I don't know how it ended up here, but I know it's real. Laughter erupted from a table nearby, cruel and dismissive. Emily's cheeks burned as more eyes pierced into her, stripping her of dignity. Alexander straightened, his voice booming. Enough! You will apologize, here and now, for daring to slander me. Or you will leave this place in disgrace. The demand hit like thunder. Apologize for speaking her mother's truth? Her breath caught. She could feel every gaze pressing down, demanding her submission. Her job, her survival, her fragile world balanced on this moment. Vanessa, clutching the necklace, leaned toward Alexander, her voice low but audible. Alex, maybe it's not worth this. Silence! Alexander barked, his fury snapping like a whip. His face flushed crimson, the veins in his neck throbbing. He wasn't just angry. He was unraveling. The maitre d' shifted again, but his courage failed him. His mouth opened, then closed. Fear chained him to silence. Emily's heart pounded so hard it hurt. Her brother's face rose in her mind. Daniel's frail smile, his whispered thank yous after every hospital visit. If she bowed now, if she apologized, what would she be teaching him? That the powerful could erase the truth with a single word. That dignity was a luxury the poor could not afford. She swallowed, her throat raw. I will not apologize, she said, louder this time. Her voice shook, but it carried through the silence. My mother was no thief, and I will not let you bury her memory. The diners erupted into shocked murmurs. Some applauded quietly under their breath. Others sneered, waiting for Alexander's retaliation. His eyes blazed. His hand slammed against the table so hard the glasses rattled. Then you leave me no choice, he hissed. Two security guards in black suits appeared from the edges of the room, their steps heavy, their presence a silent threat. They moved toward Emily, their faces expressionless. Emily's chest tightened, her pulse thundering in her ears. Was this how it ended? Humiliated, dragged out, her mother's memory trampled under the heel of a billionaire's wrath? The guards reached for her arms, and then from the back of the restaurant, a frail but commanding voice called out, Stop, I know that necklace. The words sliced through the charged air like a blade. Stop. The security guards froze mid-step. The room turned toward the back, where an elderly man struggled to his feet. His body was thin, frail, his back slightly hunched, but his voice carried an authority that silenced the restaurant. Emily blinked, her breath catching. She had never seen him before. His grey hair was combed neatly, his suit old, but pressed with care. He leaned heavily on a cane, yet his eyes, sharp and unwavering, burned with recognition as they locked on the emerald necklace. I know that necklace, the old man said again, louder this time. His words carried a weight that settled over the diners, pulling them forward in their seats. Alexander Pierce stiffened. A flicker of something, fear, crossed his face before it hardened into disdain. Sit down, old man. You don't know what you're talking about. But the stranger ignored him. Step by slow step, he walked toward the table, each tap of his cane echoing like a drumbeat. Oh, but I do. 50 years ago, I saw that necklace placed around the neck of a woman. Laura. His gaze shifted toward Emily. Your mother. Gasps rippled through the restaurant. Emily's knees nearly buckled. He knew her mother's name. He wasn't just repeating her story, he was confirming it. Alexander's jaw clenched. Ridiculous. That necklace has been in my family for generations. Custom made. There has never been another. The old man shook his head. No, I was there. I saw Alexander Pierce. His voice sharpened, stabbing through the air. Give it to her. The diners erupted into whispers, some even standing from their seats to see better. Alexander's face drained of color. Emily's heart pounded wildly. She wanted Thompson to believe, but it was too much, too sudden. You knew my mother? She asked, her voice trembling. The old man nodded slowly. She was a kind soul. And that necklace, she treasured it, not for its worth, but because of who gave it to her. His eyes flicked toward Alexander. The man sitting before you. The room exploded in noise. Gasps, shocked laughter, the clatter of glasses as hands shook. Alexander slammed his palm against the table. Enough of this madness! Who are you to make such outrageous claims? The old man's lips curved into a sad smile. Who am I? Just someone who remembers the truth you've spent your life burying. Vanessa, clutching the necklace, looked between Alexander and the stranger, her face pale. Alex, is it true? Her voice cracked, her fingers tightening on the chain as though it might vanish. Alexander's eyes flared with rage. No, this is nothing but lies, spun by a girl looking for pity and an old man chasing relevance. Security, remove them both. The guards hesitated. For the first time, their certainty wavered. The power in Alexander's command no longer rang absolute. Too many eyes were watching, too many whispers buzzing. Emily's breath shook. The old man's words had cracked open the impossible. Proof, however fragile, that she wasn't crazy, that her mother's memory was real. But she also saw the fury in Alexander's face, the desperation leaking through his cracks. He wasn't just angry, he was terrified. Why? Why would a man like him, who owned half the city, tremble at the mention of her mother's name? The old man turned his gaze back to Emily, his eyes softening. Child, your mother kept that necklace because it was never just jewelry. It was a symbol, a promise, and now the truth must come to light. The words struck like lightning, illuminating everything Emily had carried in silence for years. She felt tears sting her eyes, her chest heaving as though her mother's voice was whispering through this stranger. Alexander rose from his chair, his face twisted in fury, but his hand trembled as it pointed toward Emily. If she learns the truth, he snarled, everything I've built will collapse. The restaurant had become a theater, and every guest was a witness to a play unraveling in real time. Alexander Pierce, the man who had once commanded boardrooms with a single word, now stood trembling, his face flushed with fury and fear. Emily's chest rose and fell as she stared at him. Her whole life, she had imagined men like him untouchable, carved from stone, immune to pain or shame. Yet here he was, cracked, human, and cornered by the truth. The old man's words still echoed through the air. If she learns the truth, everything will collapse. Vanessa's grip on the necklace tightened. Her voice was sharp but unsteady. Alex, what is he talking about? What truth? Did you really give this to another woman? To her mother? The diners leaned forward, hungry for answers. Some pulled out phones, recording discreetly, though fear of Alexander's power kept most of them cautious. But the tide was turning. Alexander's lips parted, but no words came out. Instead, he stumbled back a step, his hand clutching his chest. The color drained from his face. His breath came ragged and shallow. Gasps filled the room. Alex! Vanessa cried, rising to catch his arm. But his knees buckled, his weight nearly pulling her down. The mighty Alexander Pierce collapsed onto the marble floor, the necklace swinging wildly as Vanessa bent over him. Emily froze, her heart hammering. She should have felt vindicated, triumphant even. But all she saw was a man crumpled, his empire collapsing within himself. Call 911, someone shouted. But before the panic could fully erupt, Alexander's eyes snapped open, locking on Emily. His voice was weak, barely audible, but it carried across the silence. "You look just like her," he rasped. Emily's breath caught. Her? He meant her mother. The old man stepped closer, his cane tapping against the marble. "Admit it, Alexander. Tell her the truth before it kills you." Vanessa's eyes darted between them, wild with confusion. "The truth about what? Alex, what is going on?" Emily sank to her knees beside him, torn between anger and the strange, aching compassion rising inside her. She had spent years hating faceless power, the kind that let children suffer while men like him dined in luxury. But now, staring at him broken on the floor, she saw not just power, but weakness. "Tell me," she whispered. Her voice was trembling, but steady enough to cut through the panic. "Why does my mother's necklace terrify you? What are you hiding?" Alexander's hand shook as he reached for her wrist. His touch was cold, fragile, nothing like the iron grip of the man who had humiliated her moments ago. His lips quivered. "Because," he gasped, "your mother." She was, his body convulsed, his chest heaving as though the words themselves were poison. Vanessa screamed, the guards rushed forward, and a doctor among the guests dropped to the floor beside him. "Sir, stay with us," the doctor barked, checking his pulse. Emily leaned in, desperate, her tears falling onto his sleeve. "What was she, Alexander? Say it!" But his eyes rolled back, his body stiffened, and he went still. The doctor pressed his fingers to the man's throat, his jaw tightening. "He's unconscious. We need an ambulance now." The room erupted into chaos, voices clashing, chairs scraping, waiters running for phones. Emily sat frozen, her hands trembling as she stared at his lifeless form. She felt the weight of every eye in the room, the whispers like knives. Her mother's necklace gleamed under the harsh light, swinging from Vanessa's throat as though mocking her. And in the storm of panic and disbelief, one thought burned through Emily's mind like fire. If Alexander Pierce died tonight, the truth about her mother would die with him. The sirens hadn't arrived yet, but the chaos inside Crystal Hall was deafening. Waiters darted in every direction, patrons whispered frantically, and the pianist sat frozen, his hands limp above the keys. On the marble floor lay Alexander Pierce, billionaire, empire builder, titan of New York, reduced to a pale, unconscious man. Emily knelt beside him, her mind spinning. His last words echoed inside her skull. "Your mother? She was—" But the sentence had been cut short, swallowed by his collapse. If he died now, she thought, the truth would vanish forever. Vanessa clutched the emerald necklace against her chest, her diamond bracelets clinking nervously. Her eyes darted between Alexander's lifeless body and Emily. "This is your fault," she hissed. "You came in here with your sob story, and now look what's happened." Emily's tears burned hot on her cheeks. "My fault. He was about to admit something. You saw it, Vanessa. He was hiding the truth about this necklace, about my mother." Vanessa's lip curled, but her hands trembled. "Even if he was, what does it matter? He's done. He's finished. And so are you. Nobody will believe a waitress over Alexander Pierce." The words stung, but Emily forced herself to breathe. Around her, whispers rose louder, some sympathetic, some cruel. A woman in pearls muttered, "What if it's true? What if the girl really is connected to him?" Another man scoffed, "Nonsense, she's just trying to get attention." Emily's gaze swept the room, searching for the old man who had spoken up earlier. He stood near the edge of the crowd, gripping his cane, his eyes still locked on the necklace. "Don't let them silence you, child," he said, his voice trembling but resolute. "That necklace is proof, and proof is stronger than his lies." The necklace. Emily's chest tightened. If she could get it, if she could hold it, maybe there was something, an engraving, a mark that could confirm her mother's story. But Vanessa seemed to sense her thought. She turned sharply, yanking the necklace from her throat and shoving it into her clutch. "Don't even think about it," she snapped. "This belongs to me." Emily rose to her feet, her fists clenched. No, it belongs to the truth. Before Vanessa could respond, the double doors of the restaurant burst open. 2 paramedics rushed inside with a stretcher, their movements swift and efficient. The crowd parted as they knelt beside Alexander, checking his vitals, preparing to lift him. Emily's heart pounded. If he was taken away, she might never hear the truth. She stepped forward. Wait, please. He tried to tell me something about my mother. I need— Miss, stand back, one paramedic ordered firmly. She hesitated, her hands shaking. Her brother's face flashed in her mind again. Daniel, lying in his hospital bed, waiting for hope. This was it. This was the only chance. Vanessa moved closer to the stretcher, her clutch clutched tight against her chest. She leaned down, whispering urgently into Alexander's ear, though he was unconscious. Emily couldn't hear the words, but she saw the fear in Vanessa's eyes. The old man stepped forward, his cane tapping loudly. If you let that necklace disappear tonight, you may never see it again. And with it, the truth your mother fought to protect. Emily's pulse roared in her ears. She could do nothing and watch her last chance vanish. Or she could fight. Her fists trembled. Her voice broke, but rose clear above the chaos. I'm not leaving without that necklace. The room erupted into gasps. Vanessa's eyes widened in shock, and the paramedics froze for a moment, unsure what to do. Emily stepped closer, her gaze locked on Vanessa like a flame refusing to die. And then, to everyone's astonishment, Emily lunged for the clutch. The restaurant gasped as Emily lunged forward, her hand reaching for Vanessa's clutch. For one electrifying second, time seemed to freeze. The chandeliers glimmered above, the crowd held its breath, and Emily's fingers brushed against the leather purse where the necklace lay hidden. Then chaos erupted. Vanessa shrieked, jerking the clutch away, stumbling backward into a table. Glasses shattered, red wine spilling across the floor like blood. "You crazy little thief!" she screamed, her voice shrill with panic. "I'm not a thief!" Emily cried, her chest heaving. "That necklace is proof! My mother's proof!" The 2 women grappled, their struggle raw and desperate. Diners jumped from their seats, some pulling out phones to record the scandal, others shouting for security. The maitre d' tried to push through the crowd, his face twisted with fear. Vanessa's nails scratched against Emily's arms as she shoved her. "Do you think anyone will believe you?" she spat. "You're nothing. Just a girl in an apron. And I—" She lifted the clutch high above her head, and the one holding the truth. Emily's body trembled with rage. All the years of sacrifice, of double shifts, of watching her brother waste away in hospital beds, of clutching a fake necklace because the real one had been ripped from her life, everything ignited at once. "No," she whispered fiercely. "You don't get to erase her. Not my mother. Not tonight." With a surge of strength she didn't know she had, Emily leapt again, her hands closing around the clutch. The 2 women tumbled onto the marble floor, gasps exploding around them as waiters scrambled to pull them apart. The clutch snapped open. For one suspended moment, the emerald necklace slid out, catching the light of the chandeliers. It sparkled brilliantly, almost mockingly, as if the universe itself wanted the entire room to witness it. The crowd gasped louder. Phones tilted upward, capturing the emerald's gleam. There was no denying it now. This was no cheap trinket. It was something priceless. Emily's fingers brushed the necklace, but Vanessa's hand clamped down over it. They locked eyes, both women panting, their knuckles white around the chain. "This belongs to me!" Vanessa screamed. "It belongs to the truth," Emily shot back, her voice breaking with raw emotion. The struggle drew the attention of the paramedics, who had paused mid-lift with Alexander's stretcher. The old man stepped forward, his voice quaking but powerful. "Don't you see? That necklace was never meant for you, Vanessa. It was given in love, not bought with greed." For the first time, Vanessa's composure cracked. Her eyes darted nervously toward Alexander's unconscious body. "You don't understand," she hissed. "He promised it to me. It's mine now." Emily's breath caught. He promised it to her? The words stabbed deep, twisting confusion with fury. The maitre d' finally broke through, shouting, "Ladies, stop this madness!" But no one listened. The necklace glimmered between them, the weight of generations and secrets bound in a single piece of jewelry. The crowd's whispers grew frantic. Whose is it really? Why would a billionaire's mistress be fighting a waitress over it? Maybe the girl's telling the truth. Vanessa snarled, yanking the necklace upward, its chain cutting into Emily's skin. "You'll ruin everything!" Emily's tears streamed freely, but her grip tightened. "I don't care. My mother deserves justice." And then, as if destiny itself had intervened, the chain snapped. The emerald pendant flew into the air, spinning in slow motion, catching every shard of light as the entire room gasped. Both women reached up desperately, their hands outstretched, and when the jewel finally landed, it didn't fall into Emily's hands, nor Vanessa's. It rolled across the floor and stopped at the foot of Alexander Pierce's stretcher. The emerald pendant skittered across the polished marble like fate itself had tossed the dice. It spun once, twice before coming to rest at the foot of the stretcher, where Alexander Pierce lay unconscious. The room fell into stunned silence. All eyes followed the glittering jewel as though it were the beating heart of the night's scandal. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Her body shook from the struggle, her arms scratched and burning. But none of it mattered. The necklace was right there, within reach, inches away from the man who had the answers she'd chased her whole life. Vanessa lunged first. Her heels clattered against the floor as she bent down, fingers clawing desperately toward the stone. "It's mine!" she cried, her voice sharp with panic. But Emily was faster. She dropped to her knees, her hand slamming against the floor, palm closing over the emerald just before Vanessa's nails could snatch it away. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Emily's chest heaved as she clutched the necklace to her heart. For a moment, time froze. She felt the cool stone against her palm, and with it, the ghost of her mother's touch. Tears welled in her eyes. After all these years, she had it back. Vanessa shrieked, her voice breaking. "Give it to me! Do you know what he promised me? Do you know what this means?" Emily's head snapped up, fire blazing in her tear-streaked eyes. "Yes, it means everything, but not for you. For her. For my mother." The paramedics hovered, uncertain, their patient caught in the storm of secrets. One of them tried to intervene. "Miss, please, we need space to move him." But Emily stood, necklace clutched tight in her fist. "Not until he tells the truth. Not until the world hears it." The old man with the cane stepped closer, his voice rising above the chaos. "Look at the stone. Show them the engraving." Emily blinked, her hands trembling as she turned the emerald in her palm. The diners craned their necks, straining to see. There, etched faintly along the side of the stone, were initials. A.P. Alexander Pierce. The whispers spread like wildfire. "His initials. It's real. She was telling the truth." Vanessa's face drained of color. "No, no, it can't!" She staggered backward, her clutch slipping from her grip. The maitre d', his voice steadier now, declared for all to hear. "This necklace was his, and now it's been proven. The girl is not lying." Emily's knees weakened under the weight of vindication. For the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. She wasn't just a waitress. She was her mother's daughter, standing in the light of truth. But then, a sound. A groan escaped Alexander's lips. His body stirred, his head rolling against the stretcher. Slowly, his eyes fluttered open, clouded but alive. The room froze. "Sir," the paramedic said urgently, "you collapsed. Stay still." But Alexander ignored him, his gaze fixed on Emily, on the emerald glinting in her trembling hand. For a moment, raw fear flickered in his eyes. Then pain. Then something else. Recognition. Emily's heart pounded. She stepped closer, holding the necklace out toward him. Her voice cracked but rang clear across the silent room. "Tell them, Alexander. Tell them whose necklace this is. Tell them what my mother meant to you." The diners leaned forward, the air electric with anticipation. Vanessa clutched the edge of the table, her lips trembling as though her world was crumbling. Alexander's chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. His lips parted, and with the entire restaurant hanging on his next word, Alexander whispered, "She was the only woman I ever loved." A stunned silence fell over Crystal Hall. The billionaire's confession cut through the air sharper than broken glass. "She was the only woman I ever loved." The words trembled from Alexander's lips, weak but unmistakable. His empire, his reputation, his carefully constructed armor, cracked wide open in front of strangers, employees, and enemies alike. Emily's breath caught. Her legs nearly gave way. For years, she had clung to scraps of memory, to bedtime stories and whispered promises from her mother. And now, before her, the most powerful man in the room admitted it. Her mother hadn't been forgotten. She hadn't been a thief. She had been loved. But the revelation wasn't soft or comforting. It was brutal. Because if Alexander had loved her mother, then why had she died in poverty? Why had Emily and Daniel grown up scraping by while Alexander built an empire of billions? The questions burned in her chest. "If you loved her," Emily demanded, her voice shaking with both grief and fury, "then why did you leave her? Why did you let her die alone while you lived like this?" The crowd leaned forward, breathless. Even the waiters had stopped moving, transfixed by the scene unraveling before them. Alexander's hand trembled as he tried to sit up. Vanessa rushed forward to steady him, but he shoved her aside weakly. His eyes locked on Emily, filled with torment. "I was young," he rasped. "My family. They controlled everything. They told me she wasn't worthy, that she would ruin my future. They threatened to cut me off, to destroy me if I didn't end it. And I—" His voice cracked. "I was a coward." Gasps rippled through the diners. Emily's tears spilled over. "So you abandoned her? You abandoned us?" The word hung heavy. Us. The implication sank in like a dagger. The whispers began again, louder now. "Us? Does she mean—" Could she be his? "Oh my God!" Vanessa's face went pale. "No," she muttered, shaking her head. "That can't be. Alex, tell me she's lying." But Alexander's silence was more damning than any words. Emily's heart thundered. "Tell me the truth, Alexander. Was she just some fling to you? Or am I your daughter?" The room erupted in chaos. Phones raised higher, the clatter of chairs as people stood to see, the sound of voices colliding. The truth was no longer just between them. It was a spectacle, a scandal too big to hide. Alexander's face contorted with pain, not just from his failing body, but from the truth he had buried for decades. He reached out a trembling hand toward Emily, his lips quivering. "Yes," he whispered, barely audible over the din. "You are." The room exploded. Gasps, screams, the crash of a glass dropped to the floor. Vanessa staggered backward, her hand over her mouth, her clutch falling forgotten. The maitre d' crossed himself, as though he had witnessed a revelation too great for words. Emily's world tilted. The floor felt as though it might swallow her whole. Her knees shook, her vision blurred. She had dreamed of answers, but this answer was too heavy, too cruel. Her mother's necklace burned in her palm, the truth etched into the emerald itself. She wasn't just a waitress. She wasn't just poor Emily, with nothing but memories. She was the daughter of Alexander Pierce. The old man with the cane stepped closer, his voice steady and grim. "The truth is out now. No more lies. The world will know who she is, and who you are." Alexander's breath rattled, his strength fading. "I never meant for it to be like this," he choked. "I wanted to protect you. But now—" His body convulsed, his words cut off. Emily screamed, reaching for him. and as Alexander collapsed once more, the paramedics shouted in panic. The billionaire's heart had stopped. Chaos swallowed the crystal hall. The chandeliers still glittered above, but the room was no longer a sanctuary of wealth and elegance. It was a battlefield between life and death. Alexander Pierce lay sprawled on the marble floor, his lips turning pale, his chest rising and falling in violent spasms before going frighteningly still. The monitors the paramedics had brought beeped erratically, shrill alarms filling the air. "His heart stopped," one of them barked. "Clear the space, we need to work." The diners stumbled back, knocking over chairs and glasses in their rush to give room. Gasps and sobs echoed around the hall. For decades, Alexander had been untouchable as steel. Now, in an instant, he was fragile flesh and failing breath. Emily clutched the necklace so tightly the chain dug into her palm. Her tears blurred her vision as she dropped to her knees beside the stretcher. "No, you can't die now. Not before you tell me everything." One paramedic shoved her back gently but firmly. "Miss, let us do our job." But Emily couldn't move. This wasn't just about a man's life. It was about her life, her brother's life, her mother's honor. If Alexander died here, all of it would remain tangled in secrets forever. Vanessa stood frozen a few feet away, mascara streaking down her cheeks, her diamond earrings trembling with her sobs. "Alex! Oh God, Alex!" she cried. But her panic was laced with something darker, fear of what his death meant for her place in his empire. The old man with the cane pressed forward, his voice urgent. "Child, stay strong. If he survives, the truth will be undeniable. But if he doesn't," his eyes softened, "then you must fight twice as hard to carry it forward." Emily shook her head violently. "No, he has to live. He owes me the truth. He owes my mother justice." The paramedics worked furiously. One pressed down on Alexander's chest with strong, steady compressions. Another readied the defibrillator. "Charging to 200. Clear." A jolt shook Alexander's body. His chest arched, then fell back limp. The monitor still screamed. Emily's sobs grew louder. She reached for his hand, cold and heavy in hers. "Don't leave me, don't leave Daniel. You're our father. Don't you dare abandon us again." Her words pierced the chaos, silencing even the whispers of the crowd. Some guests covered their mouths, others turned away, tears welling in their eyes. The revelation had spread like wildfire. Alexander Pierce had a daughter, and she was right here, begging him not to die. "Again!" the paramedic barked. "Charging to 300. Clear!" Another shock rippled through him. His body jerked, then stilled. The monitor flickered, then flatlined again. Emily's world narrowed to a single heartbeat that refused to return. She pressed her forehead against his arm, sobbing. "Please, Dad. Please." The word Dad shattered Vanessa. She stumbled backward, her knees buckling. No, this can't be true. She's lying. She has to be lying." But her voice rang hollow now, drowned out by the undeniable weight of the moment. The paramedics exchanged grim looks. One shook his head, sweat dripping from his brow. "One more time," he muttered, voice heavy with doubt. "Charging to 360. Clear." The third shock jolted Alexander's body higher off the stretcher. The monitor blipped, flat, then suddenly a faint rhythm. Beep, beep. The paramedics exhaled in relief. "We've got him back. Weak pulse, but he's here." The restaurant erupted in a strange mixture of applause, sobs, and stunned silence. Emily's chest flooded with relief. She clutched the necklace tighter, whispering, "You came back. Now you can't run from the truth." Alexander's eyelids fluttered. His gaze, weak but alive, shifted toward her. His lips trembled, trying to form words. Emily leaned closer, desperate to hear. And with the entire world holding its breath, Alexander whispered a single name. A name that would change everything. The faint beeps of the heart monitor steadied, though fragile. like a candle flame fighting the wind. Every soul inside Crystal Hall leaned forward, hanging on the billionaire's shallow breaths. Alexander's lips quivered, dry and pale. Emily bent closer, her hand clutching his. "Say it," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Say the name." For a moment, only silence answered. Then, with the rasp of a man clawing through decades of secrets, Alexander forced the word out. "Isabella!" The name struck Emily like thunder. Her mother. He hadn't said your mother. He had spoken her name, raw and tender, as though it had lived in his chest all these years. Gasps rippled through the diners. "Isabella. That's her. So it's true." Emily's tears spilled over. You knew her. You loved her." Alexander's eyes glistened. He nodded weakly. "She was everything, but I let them take her from me." The old man with the cane stepped forward, his face grim but vindicated. "I told you, child. I saw it with my own eyes. That necklace wasn't just a gift. It was a vow." Emily's heart twisted. She wanted to embrace the truth, to cling to the relief that her mother hadn't lied, hadn't been forgotten. But fury flared within her, too. "If you loved her," she choked, "why did you let her die alone? Why did you leave us to starve while you built your empire?" The crowd stirred, the murmurs louder now, sharp with judgment. Even the wealthiest patrons whispered accusations. How could he? She had his child. All these years. Alexander's face contorted with regret. His voice cracked, fragile as glass. "Because I was weak. My family, my father, threatened to destroy her if I didn't walk away. They told me she would never be safe with me. I thought I was protecting her, but I destroyed her instead." Emily's sobs shook her shoulders. All the years of hunger, of loneliness, of her brother's suffering, they hadn't been accidents. They had been the price of his cowardice. Vanessa's face hardened, her voice dripping venom. "You're saying she's your daughter? This Waitress?" She spat the word like poison. "What about me, Alex? What about everything you promised me?" Alexander's gaze flicked toward her, pained but unyielding. "You were a distraction. Nothing more." The crowd gasped again, some even laughing bitterly at the fall of the glamorous socialite. Vanessa's lips trembled, her eyes wild. "No, don't you dare humiliate me like this. Not after everything I've done for you." Emily's hand tightened around the necklace. For once she felt no fear, only clarity. "It's over, Vanessa. This necklace was never yours. It belonged to my mother, and now it's mine." Vanessa lunged, her nails flashing, but the maitre d' caught her arm, pulling her back. "Enough, madam. You've embarrassed yourself enough tonight." The old man lifted his cane, pointing it toward Alexander. "The truth has been spoken, but truth alone is not enough. Will you claim her, or will you let history repeat itself?" The diners went still. Cameras clicked. Eyes burned into Alexander, demanding the answer that could not be postponed. Emily's breath hitched. Her entire life hung in the balance of his next words. Would he acknowledge her as his daughter before the world, or would he retreat again into silence and shame? Alexander's chest rose and fell with trembling breaths. His eyes, heavy with years of guilt, locked on Emily's tear-streaked face. He began, his voice breaking. "I can't undo the past, but I can." Suddenly, his body seized, another violent convulsion ripping through him. The monitor blared, erratic beeps spiraling into chaos. Emily screamed, clutching his hand. And just as Alexander's mouth opened to speak his final decision, the lights in Crystal Hall flickered and went out. The chandeliers flickered once, twice, and then the grand Crystal Hall was swallowed by darkness. Gasps tore through the crowd. In a place built for elegance and order, chaos erupted instantly. "Power outage!" someone cried. "No, it's impossible. This place has its own generator," another voice shouted. Chairs scraped against marble, glasses shattered, heels clattered across the floor as panicked guests fumbled in the dark. Only the faint glow of cell phones pierced the black, casting eerie shadows across faces tight with fear. Emily's heart pounded. Her hand still clutched Alexander's, but in the confusion it felt like the whole world was slipping away from her again. His pulse was weak under her fingers. The monitor that had been beeping moments ago was silent, dead without power. "Stay calm, everyone," the maitre d' called out, though his own voice shook. "Emergency lights will come on shortly." But seconds stretched into eternity, and the emergency lights never flickered to life. Emily's eyes darted frantically. In the dim glow of scattered phones, she saw Vanessa moving. The woman's silhouette bent low, her hands scrambling across the stretcher. "No!" Emily cried, lunging forward. She knew exactly what Vanessa was reaching for: the necklace. Vanessa hissed like a cornered animal, her fingers clawing at Emily's wrist. "You don't deserve it! If Alex dies, this necklace is all I have left. Do you hear me? All I have!" Emily wrestled with her, the chain digging into her skin as they pulled in opposite directions. Around them, the wealthy patrons stumbled in panic, oblivious to the personal war waging in the shadows. The old man's voice rang out, steady despite the chaos. "Child, hold on to it! Don't let greed steal the truth again!" Emily gritted her teeth, her body trembling. "I won't!" she shouted back. But Vanessa was strong, fueled by desperation. "You think you're his daughter? You think you'll get his fortune? You're nothing but a waitress. Nobody will believe you." Emily's tears burned as fury flared inside her. "I don't care about his money. I only want justice for my mother." Her cry cut through the noise, silencing some of the chaos around them. For the first time, Emily's voice wasn't just trembling grief. It was fire. A sudden crash startled everyone. One of the heavy chandeliers rattled above, its crystals chiming like warning bells. A woman screamed, and more panic spread as guests shoved each other toward the doors. But Emily couldn't move. She and Vanessa were locked in their struggle, the necklace gleaming faintly between their fists. Alexander groaned faintly on the stretcher, his weak voice barely audible. "Emily!" Her breath caught. He had said her name. She leaned down, desperate. "I'm here, Dad. I'm here!" But his voice was drowned out as a loud bang shook the hall, like a generator failing, or perhaps something worse. The darkness deepened, pressing in like a suffocating shroud. Suddenly, Vanessa yanked hard, jerking the chain from Emily's grip. The necklace slipped free, glinting once before disappearing into the shadows. "No!" Emily screamed, her voice raw. She clawed forward, but Vanessa was already stumbling back into the darkness, clutching the emerald like a lifeline. "Stop her!" the old man shouted, but his voice was lost in the storm of panic. Emily's chest heaved. She couldn't lose it again, not after everything, not after coming so close. She shoved past the crowd, chasing the faint outline of Vanessa's figure in the flickering light of phones. The noise of screams and shattering glass filled her ears, but she heard only one thing, her mother's voice, whispering from memory. "Don't let the world take it from you." Emily pushed harder, her lungs burning, her eyes locked on Vanessa's silhouette. And then, in the middle of the chaos, a piercing scream echoed, the kind that meant someone had just fallen. The scream ripped through the darkness, sharper than the breaking of glass. For a moment, every sound in Crystal Hall stopped, the shuffling, the gasps, even the panicked whispers. Then chaos erupted again. "Someone fell!" a woman shouted. Emily shoved past shoulders and elbows, her heart pounding in her throat. The faint glow of cell phone flashlights swept wildly across the marble floor. And then she saw it. Vanessa lay sprawled near the foot of the grand staircase, her body twisted awkwardly. Her sequined gown shimmered faintly under the scattered light, but her clutch was gone, and her hand clutched nothing but air. Gasps filled the hall. Some diners covered their mouths, horrified, while others craned their necks to get a better look. "Is she?" a man whispered, Vanessa groaned faintly, her face pale, her mascara smeared by tears. "The necklace," she rasped, her hand reaching out into the void. Emily's eyes darted wildly, scanning the floor. The emerald was nowhere in sight. "No, no, no," she muttered, dropping to her knees and searching the marble. "Where is it?" The old man limped forward, his cane tapping against the floor. His voice was grim. "It must have fallen during the struggle. It's here. Somewhere." Dozens of guests turned their phone flashlights downward, the beams dancing across the floor like frantic spotlights. Emily crawled on her hands and knees, her palms stinging as they slid over cold stone. Her fingers brushed glass shards from broken wine glasses, silk scarves dropped in panic, even a diamond earring someone had lost in the chaos, but not the necklace. "It's gone!" a woman exclaimed. "No," Emily said fiercely, her voice breaking. "It has to be here. It has to." Vanessa tried to push herself upright, wincing from pain, her voice hoarse. "It's mine. You can't take it from me." But her strength failed, and she collapsed back to the floor. The maitre d' bent beside her, checking her injuries. "She's hurt. Someone call an ambulance." Emily's panic only deepened. If the necklace vanished now, it would be like history repeating itself. Her mother's truth stolen all over again. And then, through the commotion, a small voice cut through. "I found something." Every head snapped towards the source. A child, barely 8 years old, dressed in a tiny tuxedo, stood near the edge of the room. In his small palm gleamed the emerald necklace, its surface catching the faint glow of a dozen flashlights. The room gasped in unison. Emily's heart leapt. She stumbled to her feet, tears streaming, and reached for the boy. "Please, give it to me." But the child hesitated, glancing nervously at the adults around him. "It fell by my shoe. I didn't mean to." Before Emily could close the distance, another hand shot out. A tall man in a dark suit, one of Alexander's private security guards, snatched the necklace from the boy's palm. "No!" Emily cried. The guard's face was expressionless, his grip tight around the emerald. Without a word, he turned on his heel and began striding toward the back exit, cutting through the crowd like a shadow. The diners erupted in shouts of protest. "What is he doing? Why is he taking it?" Emily's lungs burned as she pushed through the bodies in front of her. "Stop him! That necklace is mine! It's proof!" But no one moved. Fear of Alexander's empire still lingered, even in its master's collapse. The old man shouted, "Don't let it vanish again! That stone carries the truth of her mother's name." Emily's pulse roared in her ears. She shoved, clawed, ran harder than she ever had in her life. The guard reached the door, his hand already pulling it open, and as the light from the city spilled into the darkened hall, Emily hurled herself forward with a desperate cry. Her hand closed around the guard's arm, just as another figure stepped into the doorway, blocking her path. The heavy door swung open, spilling a shaft of city light into the darkened hall. For a heartbeat, Emily thought she had won. Her hand gripped the guard's arm, the necklace inches from her grasp. But then the silhouette appeared. A tall figure stepped into the doorway, blocking the exit. The light framed him in shadow, but the authority in his stance was undeniable. Gasps spread through the crowd as the diners leaned forward to see who dared interrupt. "Enough," the man said, his voice deep and commanding. Emily froze, her hand still clutching the guard's sleeve. The guard stopped instantly, his grip on the necklace tightening but his body going rigid. It was clear, whoever this man was, he outranked even Alexander's personal security. The figure stepped forward, the light finally revealing his face. He was middle-aged, with sharp cheekbones and piercing blue eyes, dressed in a tailored black suit that screamed wealth and power. His presence was chilling, not because he raised his voice, but because he didn't need to. The old man with the cane gasped audibly. "You!" Emily's heart hammered. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice breaking with exhaustion and rage. The man's eyes flicked to her, then to the necklace in the guard's hand. His lips curled into a thin smile. "Someone who has been waiting a long time for this night." The whispers exploded. "Who is he? Another billionaire? Is he part of Pierce's family?" Vanessa, still sprawled on the floor, lifted her head weakly. "Richard," she whispered hoarsely, "you're here?" Emily's stomach twisted. She knows him. The man, Richard, inclined his head toward Vanessa, though his gaze never left the emerald. "You've caused enough trouble tonight, Vanessa. Sit still." His words were not cruel, but final, like a judge delivering a sentence. He extended his hand toward the guard. "Give it to me." The guard obeyed without hesitation, placing the necklace in Richard's palm. Emily's chest tightened, fury and panic clashing inside her. "No, that's mine! It's my mother's! You can't take it!" Richard turned the jewel slowly in his hand, the emerald catching what little light remained in the hall. "Your mother's," he murmured, almost to himself. Then he looked at Emily, his gaze sharp enough to cut through her defiance. "Do you even know what this necklace means?" Emily stepped forward, fists clenched. "Yes, it means everything. It's proof of who she was and of what Alexander did. It's all I have left of her." Richard's expression shifted, something between pity and amusement. "Child, this necklace isn't just about love. It's about power, and power like this doesn't belong in your hands." The words chilled her. "What are you talking about?" The old man's cane tapped against the floor as he took a step closer. "Richard, don't you dare twist the truth. That necklace was given as a vow of love, not as a weapon." Richard's eyes hardened. "You've always been naive, old friend. Do you think Alexander kept it because of sentiment? No, he kept it because he knew what it unlocked." The room fell into stunned silence. The diners exchanged bewildered glances, their whispers sharp and frantic. Emily's voice cracked. "Unlocked? What do you mean?" Richard slipped the necklace into his jacket pocket, his tone calm but unyielding. "You'll find out soon enough, but not here. Not tonight." Emily lunged forward, desperation tearing through her. "No, give it back! That's my mother's! It belongs to me!" But Richard raised his hand, and the guard stepped between them, blocking her path. The paramedics shouted from behind, their voices urgent. "She's crashing again! We need to move Mr. Pierce now!" Emily spun around. Alexander's stretcher was being wheeled toward the ambulance waiting outside, his body fragile, his breaths shallow. Her world was splitting apart, the truth she had chased slipping into Richard's pocket, and the father she had just discovered being pulled out the door. And as she screamed for them both, Richard whispered one final word that froze her blood. "He's not the only one with secrets." The ambulance doors slammed shut, and the siren wailed into the night as Alexander Pierce was whisked away. Emily stood frozen on the marble steps of Crystal Hall, her chest heaving, her eyes burning with tears. One part of her heart screamed to chase the ambulance, to cling to the father she had just found. The other part locked on Richard, the stranger who now held her mother's necklace. Richard's figure was calm, too calm, standing just inside the doorway of the restaurant. His hand rested casually on his jacket pocket, where the emerald lay hidden, as though it were nothing more than a trinket. Yet his words still echoed in Emily's skull. "He's not the only one with secrets." Emily wiped her tears with the back of her hand, fury overtaking grief. "Give it back," she demanded, her voice trembling but fierce. "That necklace doesn't belong to you." Richard tilted his head, regarding her as one might a stubborn child. "You think it belongs to you because it hung around your mother's neck? You think it's about love? No. That stone is older than either of us, and worth far more than sentiment." The old man with the cane stepped forward, his voice steady. "Don't lie to her, Richard. That necklace was crafted as a gift, yes, but it was also inscribed with codes only the Pierces understood." Gasps rippled through the few guests who still lingered, their curiosity stronger than their fear. Emily blinked, confusion crossing her face. Codes? What codes? Richard smiled thinly. Your father never told you, did he? That emerald isn't just rare. It hides information. Coordinates, bank numbers, passwords to accounts that hold power beyond imagination. Whoever possesses it doesn't just have jewelry. They have control. Emily's stomach twisted. She shook her head in disbelief. No, that's impossible. My mother would have told me. The old man's cane struck the floor sharply. She didn't know, child. To her, it was only a symbol of love. Alexander alone knew its double meaning. He gave it to her because he loved her. But when she kept it, he lost more than love. He lost leverage. Richard's eyes gleamed with triumph. And now, I have it. The crowd stirred, the whispers frantic. Bank codes, hidden power. The story was no longer about romance or betrayal. It was about an empire's secret vault. Emily's pulse roared in her ears. All her life, she had thought the necklace mattered because it tied her to her mother. Now, the truth twisted into something bigger, more dangerous. If Richard was right, this necklace could shift the balance of power in the city, or the world. She stepped forward, her fists clenched. I don't care about bank codes. I don't care about power. That necklace is my mother's. You can't rewrite what it meant to her, or to me. Richard's smile vanished. And that's why you'll never hold it. Sentiment makes you weak. Power demands blood. The old man's face paled. Richard, don't go down this path. But Richard's hand tightened over his jacket pocket. It's too late. Tonight proves that Pierce is finished. His empire will fall, and I'll be the one to rise in his place. Emily's breath caught. The pieces fell into place. This wasn't just about Alexander or her mother. Richard had been waiting for this moment, planning it. Her voice broke as she shouted, Then you used Vanessa! You used all of this just to get the necklace! Richard didn't deny it. His silence was answer enough. The chandeliers flickered back to life as power returned, flooding the hall with golden light. For the first time, Emily saw his face clearly. The cold determination, the hunger in his eyes. And as Richard turned to leave with the emerald, he whispered a warning that chilled her blood. If you want the truth, you'll have to fight me for it. The chandeliers blazed back to life, throwing every corner of Crystal Hall into sharp relief. The chaos subsided into a stunned hush as Richard's figure, tall and composed, strode toward the exit with the necklace tucked safely in his jacket pocket. Emily stood in the center of the room, her chest rising and falling like she had run miles, her fists trembling at her sides. Every eye was on her, the staff, the diners, Vanessa slumped near the staircase, the old man steady with his cane. They were all waiting to see what she would do. Her entire life had been about survival. Working shifts until dawn, eating scraps so her brother could have medicine, bowing her head when the powerful mocked her. But this wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about truth, about her mother, about who she really was. Her pulse thundered as she whispered to herself, "No more running." Emily surged forward. "Stop!" she shouted, her voice ringing through the gilded hall. Richard halted, his hand still on the door. Slowly, he turned, his piercing blue eyes locking onto hers. For the first time, a flicker of respect, or maybe amusement, crossed his face. "You've got fire," he said calmly. "But fire without fuel dies quickly." "I don't care," Emily shot back, her voice trembling but strong. "You can keep your secrets, your codes, your games of power. But you will not take my mother from me again." The old man with the cane raised his voice. "Child, be careful. He is dangerous." But Emily's mind was made up. She stepped forward, her gaze never leaving Richard. "If I have to fight you for the truth, I will." The crowd erupted in whispers, shocked and captivated. A waitress challenging a man who commanded power with a single word. It was unthinkable. Yet no one looked away. Richard's smile was thin, almost approving. Very well. But be warned. This fight won't be clean. The world isn't fair, Emily. It never was. Emily's tears burned, but her voice cut like steel. Then I'll fight dirty if I have to. Vanessa let out a weak, bitter laugh from the floor. You? Fight him? You'll be crushed. You don't know what he's capable of. Emily glanced at her, her tone firm. Maybe not. But I know what I'm capable of, and I know what my mother would want me to do. The old man stepped closer, placing a trembling hand on Emily's shoulder. His eyes shone with pride. Then fight, child. Not for power, for justice. Richard's gaze hardened. Justice is an illusion. Power is real, and I hold it in my hands. He tapped his jacket pocket, where the necklace lay like a heartbeat between them. Emily took another step forward, her body trembling but her spirit unshaken. Then we'll see who it truly belongs to. The tension thickened, pressing against every chest in the room. The diners held their breath. Some had already raised their phones, capturing every second of the showdown. The maitre d', voice quivering, whispered, "This is no longer a dinner. It's a war." Richard's lips curved into a smirk. Very well. If you want to fight, Emily, then let's fight. But know this. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a chilling whisper. Once you step into my world, there's no turning back. Emily's heart pounded. She thought of Daniel, her brother's fragile smile. She thought of her mother, whispering her last promise. And she thought of herself, no longer a shadow, no longer a servant, but someone who deserved to stand in the light. She lifted her chin, her voice unwavering. Then I'll step into it. And as Richard opened the door to leave, Emily followed him out into the night, straight into the fight of her life. The cool night air hit Emily's face like a slap as she stepped out of Crystal Hall. The city stretched around her, glittering towers and honking cabs. But all she saw was Richard's tall figure striding across the sidewalk, the emerald necklace hidden in his jacket pocket. The crowd from inside had followed, spilling onto the street. Diners in gowns and tuxedos clustered on the steps, their phones raised like torches, recording every second. For once, the spotlight wasn't on Alexander Pierce or his empire. It was on her, a waitress chasing the truth. "Richard!" Emily's voice cracked the night. "Stop running! Face me!" He paused, then turned slowly, the streetlights catching the sharp edges of his face. His smile was cold. "I'm not running, Emily. I never run. But you should, because once you cross this line, there's no going back." Emily's fists clenched. Her entire body trembled, but she held her ground. "I've been running my whole life. Not anymore." Gasps rose from the crowd. The old man with the cane stepped out beside her, his face pale but resolute. "Be careful, child. He's more dangerous than you know." Richard's gaze flicked to the old man. "Still meddling, I see? Haven't you learned? Sentiment makes you weak." Emily's tears burned hot, but her voice rang steady. "Maybe. But love is stronger than greed. And I'm not fighting for myself. I'm fighting for my mother. For Daniel. For the truth." The tension thickened, heavy as the city air. A black SUV pulled up to the curb, its tinted windows lowering just enough to reveal more of Richard's men waiting inside. "You see," Richard said softly, "this isn't a battle you can win. I hold the necklace, I hold the codes, and soon I will hold everything your father built." The words struck Emily like a blow, but she refused to bend. "You might have his codes, but you don't have me, and you don't have the truth." With a sudden motion, she lunged forward, grabbing for his jacket. The crowd gasped, cameras flashing as Emily's hand brushed the fabric. But Richard moved with terrifying precision. He twisted her wrist, pulling her close, his breath hot against her ear. "You're brave," he whispered. "Brave enough to die for nothing." Emily winced in pain, but her eyes blazed. Not nothing. For my mother. And for every lie you've buried." The old man shouted, "Emily, fight!" Fueled by his words, Emily stomped hard on Richard's foot. He faltered just enough for her to wrench free, shoving him back. The crowd erupted, some cheering, some screaming. Richard's composure cracked. His smile vanished, replaced by raw anger. He ripped the necklace from his pocket, holding it high for all to see. The emerald glinted under the streetlights, mesmerizing and ominous. "You think this is about love? About family?" he shouted, his voice carrying over the stunned crowd. "No, this is about power, Omaha. And tonight, I prove who truly deserves it." The SUV door flung open, and more men in black suits stepped out, forming a wall around Richard. Emily's chest tightened, her body trembling. She was one woman against an army. But then, from behind her, a ripple of voices rose. "We believe her. She deserves the truth. Don't let him take it." The crowd, the diners, the staff, the witnesses were rallying. For the first time, Emily wasn't alone. Her breath steadied. She stepped forward, her voice clear, unwavering. "That necklace is mine, and I will take it back, even if it costs me everything." Richard's eyes narrowed, his grip on the emerald tightening. And then, from the flashing lights at the end of the street, a new figure emerged, one Emily never expected to see. The crowd parted as the flashing red and blue lights washed over the street. From the police cruiser stepped a figure Emily hadn't expected, Detective Harris, the very officer who had once dismissed her cries when she first reported her mother's stolen necklace years ago. For a moment, Emily's stomach dropped. Not him. Not now. But Harris's eyes weren't the same as before. They were sharp, alert, carrying the weight of realization. His gaze swept from Richard's men to the trembling emerald in Richard's hand. Then finally, to Emily. "I've been hearing stories all night," Harris said, his voice steady. "About a waitress who wouldn't back down. About a necklace that holds more than jewels. Looks like the truth finally caught up to you, Richard." Richard sneered, tightening his grip on the stone. "Detective, you're out of your depth. This is bigger than your badge. Bigger than all of us." Harris shook his head. "Maybe. But tonight, it's about right and wrong, and I'm not letting you walk away with that." The crowd cheered, their voices rising with courage they hadn't felt before. Phones stayed raised, capturing every second. The world was watching now, and Richard knew it. Emily stepped forward, her body trembling, but her voice clear. "That necklace belonged to my mother, Isabella. You can talk about codes and power, but you can't erase her love, or what it meant to me." For a split second, Richard's face faltered, as if her words pierced the armor he'd built around himself. But then his fury returned, his voice sharp. "Love doesn't change the world. Power does." Emily shook her head. "No. Love is the only thing that ever has." With those words, she lunged. Gasps erupted as she hurled herself toward Richard. His guards moved, but Harris and the old man stepped in, blocking them just long enough. Emily's fingers closed around the emerald, ripping it from Richard's hand. The crowd roared. Richard staggered, his eyes wide, his composure shattered for the first time. "You don't know what you've done!" he bellowed. "That necklace, those codes, they could have changed everything." Emily clutched the necklace to her chest, tears streaming down her face. "Maybe, but they won't change who I am, or who my mother was." Police officers surged forward, pushing Richard's men back, handcuffing them as the crowd applauded. Richard struggled, shouting threats, but his voice was drowned by the cheers and the flashing cameras. Vanessa was helped into an ambulance, her face pale, her eyes hollow. For her, the game was over. And then, in the distance, Emily heard another siren, the ambulance carrying Alexander Pierce. Her breath caught. He was still alive. She turned to Harris, her voice trembling. "Please, he has more to tell me. I need to know everything." Harris nodded. "Go, We'll handle this. The old man placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Your fight tonight was more than for a necklace. It was for your dignity. Your mother would be proud. Emily's tears fell freely. Thank you. She climbed into the second ambulance, waiting at the curb, the necklace still clutched tightly in her hand. As the doors closed, she looked down at it. Her mother's necklace, her proof, her truth. In the hospital hours later, she stood at Alexander's bedside. His face was pale, his breathing shallow, but his eyes opened when he saw her. You fought for it, he rasped, just like she would have. Emily's lips trembled. Tell me the rest. Tell me everything. Alexander's hand reached weakly for hers. I will. But first, forgive me. Emily's tears fell onto his hand. I can't forgive the past, but I can forgive you if you tell the truth now. He nodded faintly. Then let's begin. Outside the hospital window, the city lights flickered. Inside, Emily stood holding the necklace, not as a waitress, not as a forgotten daughter, but as someone who had reclaimed her mother's honor. And for the first time in her life, she felt the future was hers. So that's how the story comes to an end. My dear friends, you're still here with me right now, aren't you? If you've stayed until this moment, it means something in this story has touched your heart in a special way. And I want us to pause, just for a second, to reflect together. What we just witnessed wasn't only about wealth, betrayal, or power. It was about dignity, about holding on to truth when the world tries to silence you. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Emily's fight was proof of that. She couldn't control being poor or losing her mother, but she could control whether she gave up or stood tall, and by standing tall, she reclaimed her honor. Maybe you're carrying a burden of your own, feeling overlooked, powerless, or forgotten. This story reminds us, no matter how heavy life gets, truth and love can still guide us back to who we are. If this touched you, my friends, please give this video a like, share it with someone who needs hope, and don't forget to subscribe. So together, we keep building a space for stories that heal.